Episode 197, the Harrisburg Marathon with Kim Wikel. Welcome to the Pursuit of the Perfect Race. I'm Coach Terry Wilson, and with each episode, I bring stories of athletes to you that share their experiences at races in order for you to learn how to have your perfect race. We will hear stories from athletes of all ages, abilities, and races of all distances. So regardless of where you fit in, there's something in there for you. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Now let the pursuit begin. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Pursuit of the Perfect Race. Today I have the pleasure of talking with Kim Wikel about her recent race at the Harrisburg Marathon. This race took place on November 11th, 2018, where she had a time of 3 hours, 23 minutes, and 51 seconds. She's been in endurance sports for quite some time and has a great deal of information to share with us today. Thank you for tuning in, and welcome to the show, Kim. I look forward to diving in about your race.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So, what made you want to do this marathon?
Well, ultimately, I had signed up for a fall marathon for one of two reasons. It was either going to be bettering my Boston time so I could have a better corral for 2019, or if my Boston qualifying time for 2019 didn't get me in, I would be able to race for 2020. Wow. So the fall marathon was always on my schedule. It just the result of it was going to be different based on my Boston qualifier.
Okay. So to get a better understanding of what you've done this year, what races have you done of substance this year so far?
Mostly triathlons this year. My triathlon schedule started in June, and I ran through mostly local triathlons, June through August. Nationals in Cleveland was my A race. I did a double there, both the Olympic and the sprint. And then I took maybe 2 weeks off, not off, but I took a little recovery time for there and then bounced right into this marathon training.
Wow.
Which was in November.
So busy year for you.
Yeah, fairly busy, but actually a little bit of a down year for racing compared to other summers.
Down year in volume of training maybe? Or
no, volume of races.
Okay. So going into this race, what was your training like?
My training was, I would say, more intense more intense than other marathons that I have run. You know, there's that old adage, if you want to have a different result, you have to do something different. And my coach and I went into this a little bit differently. In the past, if it was a long run scheduled, most marathon training plans say your long run should be 1 minute slower than your race pace because it's time on your feet that counts. You want to just practice the fat burning stage of a marathon and time on your feet, and you don't have to do the marathon race pace on your long runs. We went into this one a little bit different. For every long run that I had some sections of race pace efforts in that long run, or even faster. Sometimes I had half marathon race pace efforts in my long run, which was significantly different than most of my other marathon training plans.
Okay, so being a triathlete with your coach, did y'all keep the swimming and the biking in there or anything else, or was it solely just run training?
No, we definitely kept swimming and biking. One, because I am a triathlete and I would like to keep those going. But two, we can use those for strength building and for recovery. So I worked out. I had to work out about 6 days every week, maybe one full day off. There were several weeks where I would go every day, but I would have a recovery swim in there. So maybe 2,000, 2,600 yard swim following my long weekend or a long run as an act of recovery. And then I would always have at least one brick and sometimes one day with just bike only.
Okay. So going into this race, what was your training looking like from a normal week? Did you have a certain workout you did Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? Was it like a build up during the week and then on the weekend it was just a long run, a long bike? What was this?
Yeah, sort of a combination of those. I'm a teacher, so I have a full-time job. And so my workouts during the week were limited to to about 2 hours. That'd be about the max I could do after work. So I planned the weekends for the long rides or long runs or combination. So I put in most of my big time on Saturdays and Sundays, and then 2 hours or so throughout the week. So Mondays were typically a swim because the weekends were my long efforts or hard efforts. So Mondays were always a swim or recovery. And then Tuesdays and Wednesdays would be a run. Sometimes Wednesdays had a bike. Thursdays typically were the big bricks with a bike run. Fridays was another run, sometimes shorter, like no more than 45 minutes on the Friday. And then Saturday and Sunday were the big days. And oftentimes the weekend included a bike as well. Sometimes it was what my coach calls like a muscular endurance bike. So a super short 30-minute bike, but you're pushing high watts and low cadence, kind of like climbing a hill for 30 minutes and then get off and try to run at race pace for 90 minutes on tired legs.
Wow. So going into this race, what did your long runs look like? How do they build up and progress? My coach, I think, prefers to do time versus mileage. And that was an interesting concept at the beginning of our coaching relationship because I'm obviously rather competitive. So I would go out running, and instead of having a 6-mile run, if I was suffering or if it was cold or if it was hot, I would say, the sooner I get home, the sooner the 6-mile run can be done. But when he gives you a 50-minute run, I don't care how fast you run that 50 minutes is still 50 minutes. So my long runs were on minute based, and they basically went up about 15 minutes every week. So it would be 1:30, 1:45, 2 hours, 2:15, 2:30, and that's how they build up each weekend. Wow. So what was the most hours you trained in 1 week?
In 1 week, gosh, I never even looked at that data. My guess would be probably close to 14 or 15 hours for the week.
Wow. So as intensity and as volume increases, how do you mitigate the risk of getting injured?
I probably should knock on wood. I have been really, really lucky with not having injuries in triathlon training or in marathon training. I feel like most of that is what I do to take care of my body. I'm a firm believer in what I put in my body nutrition-wise will help me recover. So my recovery includes, healthy whole foods, and I'm a home or family and consumer science teacher, so I definitely focus on the foodie part of it. But I also do a lot of maintenance. I am a firm believer in stretching thoroughly after every single workout, even if it was a 30-minute easy recovery jog. I'm still going to stretch after it. I have a great masseuse who takes great care of me. I've seen her for 7 to 8 years, and she knows all my typical aches and pains, and I almost don't have to say anything. She can see me when I walk through the door what needs to get worked on, and she's not afraid to work on it hard. And I do, when I'm in training, like in hardcore training, I see her every 2 weeks. In off season, it's about every 3 weeks. We also have a hot tub and a sauna here at my house that I'll sit in to help flush out lactic acid or soak tired and sore muscles. So I feel like I've got the recovery and mitigating injuries down because, one, I haven't had any, and two, I have all the resources at my disposal that I'm not afraid to use. Wow.
The only thing you don't have, it sounds like, is some Normatec boots or something like that.
I actually do have Normatec
Oh my gosh.
I probably should have threw that out. Yeah. Those are, have you used those before? My gosh, those are definitely heaven on earth. I took them to the race with me. So when we drove home 5 hours, as soon as the race was done, I sat in the truck in the boots for 2 hours, and that was great.
Wow, that's pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So you're building up to roughly 14 hours of training in 1 week. Were there any days in training where you just didn't want to train mentally?
Yeah, there were probably a few days. It wasn't always, maybe it was mental, but it was more fatigue. I get up at 5 a.m. I teach 150 high school students for 8 hours a day. I'm in my car driving for 90 minutes a day, 45 minutes there and back. So there were times where I would get home from that 90-minute drive, and the last thing I wanted to do was go run. I just wanted to get in my pajamas and go to bed or something other than run. And so, and I'm not even sure my husband knows this, but there were several times I would come home from work and take a 10, 12, 15-minute nap on the couch. And I had some of my best runs after I took that little cat nap after work. It just sort of reset me, gave me that little pep that I needed. And they say sometimes it's always that first step out that door that is sometimes hard. And it's true. So I would get up out the nap. I would make sure my warm up was really good because I was coming from cold on the couch to sometimes a harder run. And I'd get out there within 30 seconds to a minute. I was feeling great and I nailed the run and I came home. And that's a good feeling when you have a successful workout when it wasn't really what you wanted to do.
Wow. So you would literally you'd be completely asleep for 15 minutes or so and then get out and go run. Would you sleep in your run clothes?
No, I would sleep in my work clothes.
Oh, wow. Literally could just come home and pass out.
Like legitimately come home, sit on the couch, pass out, dream, set my alarm so I wouldn't sleep past the 15 minutes. But most of the time I woke up before was exactly what my body needed. I would get up, I would, grab a little sip of Numa, which is the hydration that I use, and then go out and run and nail those workouts. And it was a really good feeling being able to do that when I was feeling so fatigued.
Right. So what about the other times where you just really didn't want to train and you didn't take the nap, or then you already got the nap and you still didn't want to train? What do you do then?
Honestly, I use a lot of what I see on Instagram with Shalane Flanagan and Kara Goucher and some of those elite women that I definitely see as role models for me. And Shalane has this thought process where she says, I don't have to run today. I get to run today, or I will run today. And, Kara Goucher has that book Strong out there about positive thinking and turning your mindset around. And honestly, that has worked wonders for me. So instead of thinking, oh my gosh, I have to go home and run today, it was, no, I get to run today and it's going to be a great run. And I'm going to get out there and I'm going to crush this. And every building block is going to help me set make the goal that I've set. Because at every training cycle that I have for every A race, I set goals for myself that I will look back on and to remind myself why I'm doing this race and the purpose of the race and to keep myself accountable. So on those mentally hard days, I can just look back at my goals and think about the elites that I wish that I could be someday and refocus my attention and my mindset and go crush it.
Wow. So it seems like you're coming from a place of gratitude, even with your running.
Oh, for sure. Yes. I would agree with that.
Wow. So you're building up to 14 hours a week. You're getting all your training in and knowing that this is almost like a part-time job of recovering plus the training itself, because that 14 hours doesn't take into account any recovering or stretching or foam rolling or massages or anything like that. So if we add all that in there, this is literally like a part-time job on top of the 40-hour work week that you do at the school, traveling back and forth. How do you balance life, work, and training with all this?
That's a good question. I think through practice, I've been able to do that. I have a really amazing husband who is incredibly supportive with my training. He's a runner himself. We met at a race, so he knows the intensity and the training and the mindset and the commitment that you have to set yourself high goals like this and go out there and achieve them. So he's never begrudged me for, to being too tired to make dinner so that he's got to come home from work and also help make dinner or something like that. So having that support is really helpful. I plan my weeks if I can, if I know the training cycle is going to be hard or long around that. So even though I have those massages every 2 weeks, I try to schedule them perhaps on a week that's not so intense. Because if I have to have a massage after work, that means I get up at 4:00 in the morning to get my workout done in the morning before I go to work. Because once I have the massage, I'm not going to get a workout, and you shouldn't be running after a massage. So I would try to organize or schedule those things around that schedule with the support of my husband.
Okay. So if your husband didn't do endurance sports and he wasn't also a runner, the support that he would give you would still be, hey, I'm going to understand what's going on. I'm going to help with the laundry. I'm going to help cook dinner. I'm going to help do all the things at the house that normally you do. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to take that stress off of your plate because you care about your goals. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. He probably would do that anyway, but I think he's more understanding that, it's 7:45 and I need to go to bed because I have to get up at 4:00 in the morning for a workout. And, so he would say, okay, I'll take care of the dishes, or he'll get the coffee ready. And, the week leading up to the marathon, I went to bed between 7:40 and 5 and 8 every single night. And there was, zero trouble, and he didn't make fun of me or, tease me about it at all, because he knew that this was an important goal and that I had to do that for myself.
Right. And it's not necessarily teasing you about it. It's, hey, this is actually important to you, and I'm going to give you my full support by not giving you flack about it, not making fun of you about it, because this is really important to you.
Right. He understands that when you have high standards for yourself and you set high goals and that you are really striving to work to them, it does create some amount of selfishness in that person. I need to be selfish with my time right now. And he understands that that's not against him or against anybody else, but that's me trying to achieve these high goals that I have for myself.
Right. And there's people out there that don't understand what it's like to have this level of support. And what would you tell them to get to that level of support?
I would say maybe try to have their partner share with them if they could, even if the partner's not a runner or into sports, there's typically a down day, an easy bike ride or an easy run, or maybe a hike or a walk with the puppy dog or something like that. Try to include them in on those days so they can see, how you're working and how hard you're working if they don't quite understand it. And perhaps that would help.
Right. So what are you doing from a day-to-day nutrition aspect?
In what regard?
Just day-to-day nutrition, being that you're working out 14 hours a week. How are you monitoring nutrition well? Because nutrition plays such a key part into this. I mean, you can literally gain weight while you train for a marathon, but you could also lose weight and you could also maintain weight just depending on what you eat. And how are you maintaining what you're eating and making sure you're getting enough fuel while not overeating?
Right. Okay. So I would say in my 2 to 3 build weeks, I definitely had trouble keeping weight on. I felt an incessant hunger. I felt like I was constantly eating, but I wasn't losing a significant amount of weight, but I definitely wasn't gaining weight, and I certainly wasn't maintaining every single day. It was more fluctuation. And with my schedule, it's hard to get a really good breakfast in the morning. So I am a big fan of getting a protein shake in the morning that I make. So I would make it in the morning and I would drink it in my first and second period classes to sort of keep a constant flow of protein first thing in the morning. Even when I'm not in full on training, I definitely eat smaller meals throughout the day. I'm also a big fan of every 2 to 3 hours having a small healthy snack. I have a couple food allergies, so I tend to make all of the food that I'm eating. I don't usually eat some of the boxed or processed things. So, I make my own granola bars or snack mixes like that, mixed nuts, something similar to that, that I would just eat throughout the day, or whole foods like a banana with peanut butter, apple, things like that. But I would, I was definitely, I've never counted calories. That's not something that I do. I focus or base my nutrition on my hunger level and how my clothes are fitting. So I know that I might need to increase it based on, how I'm feeling, how my clothes are fitting, even how my workouts are going in the afternoon. So if I'm not running well, I might look back and say, did I not have enough carbohydrates today? How was my protein level last night? Is that sort of thing.
Okay. So with these meals and your protein that you're getting, are you doing a protein shake at night as well?
Not often a protein shake at night. A good friend of mine introduced me to NBS, no bullshit, the company, and they have a recovery drink. It tastes almost like hot chocolate. You mix it with a little, yes, it's amazing. And it's a recovery drink that you drink right before bed, but you're really only supposed to drink it right before you go to sleep or right before you go to bed. And you mix a little bit of coconut milk or almond milk, and it tastes like hot chocolate. And that helps you recover overnight. So on my super hard workouts or super long workouts, I would end the night with that, but not a protein shake.
Okay. So as you start thinking about you're getting closer to the race, what does your taper actually look like?
Well, my taper was a little different than it has been, I suppose, in the past. My husband and I traveled 2 weekends before the race, and there were some travel hiccups coming home. So we were supposed to come home on a Sunday, and we didn't come home until a Monday. So, and Monday was travel. Monday was flying. And now my race is the next weekend. And my coach and I really wanted me to have one more long run. Originally, we had planned it to be on that Monday, but now I'm traveling and that can't happen. So, my coach texted me on Tuesday morning when I was at work and said, hey, are you feeling? You want to try a long run tonight? And I told him, I said, yeah, the time changed too. The time, the dark coming so soon. I said, I have a couple hours. I have about 2 hours that I could get a long run in after work. And so let's try a 14 to 15 mile run when you get home from work. And I was I was nervous about that because I had just spent Friday, Saturday, Sunday out of town with my husband, my brother, and my sister-in-law, and then flying home on Monday, and then going right to school on Tuesday morning, and then working all day at work. I mean, that's not a very conducive couple of days to have a very successful last long run. And sure, 15 miles isn't incredibly long run, but it's a long enough run. And it was designed to try to give me some confidence going into the marathon.
Right.
So I said, no problem, I'll do it. Came home exhausted, wanted to take my little 15-minute nap, but I knew I didn't have the time because the dark was going to close in on me, and I didn't want to risk not getting this run in. So I just changed really quickly, did my warm up, got out there, and I had one of my best runs. My pace was right on the money. My cadence, my heart rate, everything was as spot on as it could have been. And I got done and I was so excited. I can do that run after traveling, after working. I know that I'm 100% ready to go. So that was my last long run. And then we went into pretty much like a more mild end of the week. And then Sunday, essentially leading up to the race. So an entire 7 days of taper, which just meant coming down in mileage and time, but the intensity was still there.
Wow.
And he added an extra bike, I think, just to keep the pounding off the feet, kind of recover a little bit and get ready for the race.
Okay. So what was your longest run?
My longest run ended up being about 19 miles. It was 2 hours and 30 minutes. And so it ended up being about just a touch over 19 miles.
Okay. So as you start tapering and you get ready for the race as far as the week of, when do you actually want to start traveling over to Harrisburg?
That was another sort of factor that my coach and my husband and I kind of went round and round with. Harrisburg is about 5.5-ish hours from my house. So not far, but far enough. And we were driving. So the question was, do I leave Friday after work and drive there and then basically have all day in Harrisburg on Saturday? But then what am I going to do in Harrisburg all day on Saturday other than go for a short shakeout run and do a packet pickup? So, or I drive out Saturday morning. My worry was having car legs, and use car for 5 hours and then you try to run a marathon the next day and your legs aren't always ready to move because you just sat them for 5 hours in a cramped car. So my husband and I and my coach, we went round and round, and what we ultimately decided was to do the Saturday morning, which was easier on me, easier on, I have a dog that needs care and we weren't going to take her to the race. So I needed to make sure my dog sitter could come take care of her. So we left Saturday morning relatively early, about 8:00, and drove. And the compromise that my coach and I came up with was that I was going to do a double shakeout run. So when I woke up on Saturday morning, I went and did just a short 15-minute run. It had a 5-minute piece at race pace, came home, took a quick shower, drove to the race or drove to Harrisburg, picked up my packet, got done that, changed, and ran a 2-mile shakeout run just to shake out the car ride, and 1 mile easy, 1 mile at race pace, shut it down, call it a day. So I did about 4 miles or so, but I broke it up in those 2 segments, and it evidently worked beautifully because I had a great race on Sunday morning with no fear of car legs.
Nice. So did y'all get an Airbnb, a hotel? Where'd y'all stay at?
We stayed at the Radisson in Harrisburg, which was on the race websites, one of their 2 recommended hotels to stay at. It was where the expo was held, and it was also where a pasta dinner was held the night before. And it was probably not even a half a mile from the race start. So it was pretty convenient to get to the race start, and even from the race finish. Even though the race finish was a different location than the start, it still was rather convenient to get there from both of those locations.
Nice. How was the expo there?
The expo was good. It was nice and small and quaint, which works well for me because you have less anxiety, and, I don't need all of that, all the people and all of the moving around. So it was super easy, super simple. I've done Boston 3 times, and that expo is huge. And, my anxiety gets up there, my heart rate gets up, and it's exciting. And sometimes when we do that one, we try to hit that one 2 or 3 days before the race, so you don't have those feelings going into it. So this was nice to pull up. I stood in line for probably 30 seconds, got my race bib. My husband bought a couple pair of Gooder sunglasses, and we got out of there. So it was pretty simple, but it was nice.
Wow. So what about a nutrition plan the day before the race? Do you have a certain meal plan you want to get in?
Yes, I have foods that I want to eat for sure before that I know work well with my body, that I don't have trouble with. Like I mentioned, I have a couple allergies to some foods. So I want to. I'm allergic to maltodextrin, which is, if you ever look at sport nutrition, is usually the first ingredient on any sport nutrition. It's basically a derivative. It can be either used as a sweetener or as a thickener for things like gummy bears or goos, or even in barbecue sauces and salad dressings. It's a derivative from potatoes. And so I have a potato and milk allergy so I have to stay away from both of those. It's a pretty, I don't get anaphylactic, but it's digestive. So it'll lay me out for a good 3 days if I have even a small amount. So if I'm traveling and racing, I try to eat as close to the earth as possible to make sure that it doesn't have any of those preservatives or additives in there. So my race day, or the day before my race, I try to eat, I would say, a little bit bigger breakfast. And then once that breakfast is done, then I start eating smaller meals or snacks throughout the day. And my biggest, like the thing I'm a biggest fan of for eating, and I've done it every single race, as I love pizza the night before my race. I feel like you can't mess it up. You're not going to get sick from eating a salmon or a chicken that isn't cooked right if you're traveling. It's got the perfect carbohydrates and salt from the sodium and the tomato sauce, and you've got a little bit of protein in there. For me, pizza is my 100% go-to, whether I'm home or traveling for a race.
Wow. So
we definitely found a little pizzeria and had some pizza in Harrisburg, but heading out, I had a little, I do like grits in the morning. I'm a big fan of grits for carbohydrates, and then, fruits and low fiber for the rest of the day before.
So what kind of pizza did you get?
I got I don't even remember what it was called. I added some sausage to it because it didn't have meat on it, but it had cheese and spices and a little bit of red sauce. And yeah, I just almost like a margarita pizza, but I added some sausage to add a little bit of extra sodium and protein.
Okay. So as far as your plan going into this race, you already got checked in and we're the day before right now. What did you and your coach, Dave, actually want to do at this race from a goal or a strategy of how to attack this race to get the time that you wanted?
So I think it's Murphy's Law that leading up to this race, so about the Tuesday before the race, I started getting sick. So I started waking up with sore throats, and then I started getting these nasty monster sinus headaches. I mean, giant monster headaches that I couldn't, I was almost unfunctioning at work. My lights were off in my classroom because the lights hurt so bad. And this was Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday leading up to the race. So it was uncomfortable. I was concerned. My coach was concerned because, I have big plans and now I'm not feeling great. So he called me on the road on Saturday morning on the way out, and we talked over the race strategy and what we wanted to do. And I was intent on going for broke. I wanted to, start strong, stay strong, and just finish strong and just go. And he was more rational in his race plan, as a great coach is. And so he recommended that, not knowing how my body was going to hold up, how this sickness could be affecting me later in the race, he had suggested that I take the first 10K a little bit more conservative, perhaps a little bit more controlled. Not maybe slower is the right word, but yeah, slow it down just a bunch. And then sort of pick it up maybe by 5 seconds a mile for the next 10K. And then at the second 10K, when I'm now halfway through, reassess if my body feels good. If I feel strong, then go for it at that point. And if not, well, then I'm just going to hold it at, what I'm running. And even with that plan, even if I just hold that pace, he was certain that I could get my goal as long as we manage that first 10K well. So that was his idea and his goal. And so that's essentially the race plan at a glance.
Okay. So with this, did you have an idea of what kind of time you wanted to get?
Yes. So my PR leading up to this was a 3:30:29 that I had achieved in 2014. So it has been years since I've even gotten close to that. And my ultimate goal, if I were to write them down, my ultimate goal was to get a PR. So I wanted to go faster than a 3:30, plain and simple, faster than a 3:30. But my secret goal that really I only share with my husband and my coach was that 3:25 was really my sweet spot. Like in a perfect world, in a perfect race, if dreams come true, I want to run a 3:25 someday at this race would be great. So let's do that. But I wasn't sure that I could knock off 5 minutes in one race when I hadn't gotten even close to that in the last 4 years. And then I wasn't feeling well to begin with. And then the other goal, which was the ultimate goal, was to qualify for Boston. So my Boston qualifying time is a 3:40. So if I run even close to a 3:30, even if I don't get my PR, a 3:30 is going to get me in. But I will tell you, if I had run a 3:30 or a 3:31 and qualified for Boston, I would not have been happy. I would have probably cried the entire way home. Even though I got my ultimate goal of making it into Boston, it was not what I wanted or what I really, really, truly wanted. So that 3:25 was let's go for broke. And so in that conversation with my husband and my coach on the way out, I had decided that I would rather go for broke and finish in 4 hours and 30 minutes than to get a 3:29 PR. That I wanted to really try and see what I could do. And, my long run paces set me up that I could run this 3:25 if I could hold it for the next 7 miles. But those last 7 miles, that's where the money is made in a marathon. You never know what your body's going to do. But I had decided that going for broke and trying for that goal was going to be better than me settling for an easy 3:29 PR.
Right.
And so that was what I set out in my mind to do.
So basically you want to hold 8-minute miles for a marathon.
That would have been 3:30s, I think. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I wanted to go much faster than that.
And you're talking to your coach on the way down to Harrisburg. Now, if we take a mental snapshot of your confidence here, what workouts did you do in training that gave you the confidence to have this conversation saying that you actually feel like you can do this?
All of my long runs from probably 13 miles up, and even the ones before, but I don't consider, my 10 and 12 mile long runs in a marathon training plan. Right. Exactly. So it's crazy how we start talking like that, right?
I know.
It's not a long run. When to the average person, they won't even run 2 miles, and 2 miles is a long run. But in a marathon training plan at the level that I'm competing, I don't consider my 10 and 12 mile long runs. But even those runs, I was having really successful runs, and I was coming home with my running a hilly course. So he'd set me out on, we're doing hill work today, and we're going to, try to hit your race pace on a hill, on hill training. And I would come home and look at the data, and my heart rate was solid, lower than I expected it to be. And my pace was 7:40 to 7:45 pretty consistently on these uphills. So I was able to hold it for those workouts. And then ultimately, I would say my 17 miler and my 19 miler were my two biggest confidence boosters. My 17 mile overall pace was a 7:41. And that felt really good to come home and do that. There was in that run that I had a 45-minute piece at half marathon pace. And that's a fairly big piece at half marathon in the middle of a 17 mile workout. And I was doing an out and back that day, and my husband was out of town. And typically on these long runs, if he's not doing them with me, he would come and, just make sure, one, I'm not hit by a car on these country roads, or two, do I need any more nutrition, or how's my hydration, or do you need another pair of gloves or whatever? But he was busy and out of town. So I was alone. And when you go out and back for 17 miles, that's a
long way out there.
It's a long way from home. If I start suffering and I've got to walk it in, I'm a long way from home.
That's a gamble. You're not doing loops.
No, exactly.
And you're also relying on your body not to want to lose weight along the way as well.
Yes, exactly. So, and basically at the turnaround was where I had to start my 45-minute half marathon piece. And I got a little, oh my gosh, maybe I'll just run what I know I can run and not try to push this 45 minutes, because if I suffer, I'm stuck. I'm legitimately stuck out here miles from home. I don't run with any technology other than my watch. So I don't carry a cell phone. I don't have anything to and where I run, there's houses like one every mile, because it's country roads and it's farmers. So I had a little moment of, maybe I don't do this, and I'll just explain to my coach why when I get home, and I'm running strong and the 750 pace is fine right now. And then I said, you know what? No, again, if you want to have a change, you've got to make a change. You've got to do something different if I want to have a different result. So I said, all right. And, my husband has a group of running friends that I run with sometimes, and they are big into the HTFU. So they've taught me that along the way. And I had a little, one, I think I can do this. And two, yeah, maybe you do need to do a little bit of HTFU out here and see what you got. And if you have to walk it home, then you have to walk it home, but at least you tried. So I picked it up and I ran that 45-minute piece. And then I got to the part where I was supposed to like cool down, or not cool down, but like slow the pace down. And I just, like, even though I was consciously trying to slow that pace down, it was like my body was now set at running that half marathon pace. And I finished the run at that half marathon pace. And my notes to my coach after that was, I felt like I could have gone forever today at that pace. So that was a huge, huge confidence booster for me, that particular run. Yeah, I won't forget that day for a long time.
Those are so awesome, aren't they?
Yes, yes. And my nutrition my head was on point.
Man, I wish I could have that every day. So
I know,
awesome.
right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Just can I just like put that in a jar and sell that? Just sell
Yes.
it. Everybody that's an athlete would buy like 20 of them. I guarantee it.
Oh, yeah, more than that for sure.
Yeah. So that's what we were talking about in the conversation in the car to your coach. That's how you had this confidence to say that you wanted to go for it.
Right. And so when we were talking, he said, I can hear it in your voice. You're focused, you're confident, you're ready to go. He's like, it's even giving me goosebumps listening to you. He's like, I'm in off season and I'm getting pumped up just listening to you, because I was legitimately ready for this race. And if it was in my power, if it was in my control, it was going to happen. And that's how I went into it. It's up to me.
Wow. So to fast forward a little bit, you've already gotten there. You've got your packet pickup. You've already had your pizza with some sausage on it and all this fun stuff. Now then, the night before the race, what time are you going to bed?
Right. So we were sitting in bed, watching those UFC fights, and I was in my Normatec boots, just waiting for my friend to come in from out of town, or from Ohio. And we were just going to have a little bite with him and then go off to bed. And in those moments of waiting or in the boots, I got super relaxed and I completely zoned out. I mean, done for. And my friend Brad had text saying, hey, he was like 10 minutes out, and the text woke me up, and I looked at it and I looked at my husband and I said, I don't think I can like make it downstairs. I mean, I am legitimately tired, and I'm at that groggy sleep where you just don't want to wake up. And my husband said, no problem. He will understand. He's just stay sleeping, because obviously your body needs it, and I'll go down and have him or whatever, and I'll see you in a little while. And so my husband left. I stayed sleeping, and I don't even remember him coming into the room after he was done. I mean, I was out cold, and I never sleep well the nights before a race, never. And I always tell my student athletes that I coach and, other people that it's always the 2 nights before sleep that is the most important sleep, because if you've ever had like an all-nighter, so you have an all-nighter on a Thursday, you feel a little tired on Friday, but you really feel it on Saturday. Like you really feel that lack of sleep 2 days later. So and all of my athletes and all the people that I talk to about it and that I coach, I always say, try to get really good sleep the 2 nights before, because you're never going to sleep well the night before. You're going to have anxiety and nerves, and that's part of racing. But I conked out in Harrisburg, and I got really good sleep. I woke up before my alarm, which is pretty typical, but I got a pretty good amount of sleep. My husband said there was a dog in the hallway or in the room across the hall from us that was barking all night. I didn't even hear that. I mean, yes, I was out. It was great.
Wow. So you get up on race morning at what time?
This race started at 8, and I wanted to be up and moving about 5:45 or 6, just, moving around my room, getting a little bit of coffee, checking out the weather, that kind of stuff. And I was awake at about 5:30, and I always feel bad getting up that early when my husband is there and there's no, if we're at home racing, I can get up and come downstairs and he can stay sleeping. But in the hotel room, I have to turn on lights to wake myself up. It's obviously going to wake him up. So I try to wait until about 5:45 or so before I started making a little ruckus and turning on the lights and things. But he popped right up and it was fine. And he went and got me some coffee while I stayed in the room and did a little just like active stretching and just getting ready for the day and, laying out my clothes, figuring out for sure what I wanted to wear by checking the weather and getting my nutrition ready, filling up my bottles, that kind of stuff.
Wow. So again, this comes back to the whole supporting thing of your husband. Hey,
yes.
I'm going to get up with you. I'm not going to make you feel bad for waking me up. I'm just going to go ahead, get up, go down. Right. Hey, I'll get some coffee for you. Again, take that stress off your plate and help you out. And not give you flack for, well, I guess I'll go down and get me some coffee. You want some? No, it's, hey, you need coffee. I'll go get some for you.
Yes. That was exactly it.
The wording and how you go about doing things, or really the things that you don't say and don't do, is really more supportive than the things that you do if you do say it. It seems like. No, I've been picking up on things with that throughout all this so far, and it's really amazing. Now, with that, I lost my train of thought. It happens.
It's okay.
Gosh. So what were you doing for breakfast?
So typically hotels that are hosting runners would have some form of breakfast. I've never not had a hotel offer even bananas and orange juice or just something.
Something small.
There was something small, sometimes bagels if they're super nice or, but when my husband went down to get coffee, he asked if there was breakfast available. He was probably asking for himself because he knew he had a long day ahead of him and he wanted something to eat. And he was also asking for me. And I had brought my own bread for toast because, one, I know it works well for my body and I can't, sometimes hotels have more processed bread than I want to eat. So I had brought that, but I prefer it to be toast versus just bread. So, and he had asked if there was a toaster available, and they said there was nothing available until 6:30, and we were, or 7 o'clock, and we were already going to be pretty much out the door by then. So he asked for orange juice. There was no orange juice available. I mean, there was legitimately nothing. It was just coffee. So,
and this is the host hotel.
The host hotel was listed as the Hilton. This was where the race expo and the pasta dinner. So like second host hotel, I suppose you could say. I mean, it was listed on the race website as a recommended hotel per se. But so that was a little disappointing because, all the pacing teams were hosted there. So everyone that was running a pacing team was there. I would say the majority of the people that were there that night or that day were runners in the marathon. So to not have even orange juice and a banana was a little disappointing. So I improvised. I didn't let it bother me. It probably bothered my husband more because I didn't bring breakfast for him. I only brought breakfast for me. So I brought my own peanut butter. I brought my own bread, and I brought actually 2 bananas. So I just
and
made.
You probably brought a knife too to put the peanut butter on the.
I actually did.
Yes. Okay.
And I had a little bit of honey, so I just put my basically 2 pieces of open face bread with some peanut butter, sliced banana, and then I used the honey stinger honey. And and sometimes my race nerves in the morning make it hard for me to eat. And I kept saying to my husband, I just need to eat these because I know my race will be affected if I don't have these calories now. And I try to get those calories about 90 minutes before the run. This was a little bit earlier. So this was about 6:15 instead of like 6:30, but I didn't want to wait because I wanted to make sure I got it in. And I also just thought that getting some was better than none. So my husband was doing some things around the hotel room, and finally I just got out my phone and I actually just started doing mindless things on my phone, when I think that distracted me enough that I was able to eat my toast without knowing that I was eating my toast, if that makes sense. Because if I was just like to sit there and try to focus that yes, I need to eat this, it would have just created more like race nerves, and I wouldn't have been able to eat it. But I got both my pieces down. I got a little bit of coffee. I brought some extra Numa, which is the hydration that I use for the race. So I downed about half of one of those with my breakfast just to aid in the digestion as well. And did really good at making sure that I had that pre-race breakfast that I knew worked well for me in all of my long runs and would set me up for a pretty solid day.
Wow. So how did you decide what to wear? This is below freezing here at 25 to 27 with some winds that day. How did you know what to wear for this? Because you're obviously going to warm up, but it's still kind of chilly. How did you know what to wear?
I prefer this degree range for my marathons. I've never run other than Boston 2016, which was relatively warm. I've never really run a warm marathon. I prefer cold. And from Ohio, living on the lake, the cold and the wind is what I'm used to. So I see, 25 to 40. I know exactly what to wear. I mean, it really eliminates the questions, which is helpful to have to decrease that anxiety and a race plan. So I brought bottoms. I mean, the bottoms were easy. I had the socks, my favorite socks that I like to race in. I had a pair of capris that are actually pretty light, but they're a little bit longer to keep the thighs a little bit warmer. And then I had a long sleeve, a short sleeve, and gloves. And that was what ideally I was going to wear. But I kept checking the weather, and the 27 to 29, and it felt like 25, that was a little like, am I going to be a little bit cold? Plus, I knew we were running along the river, and in Ohio, I know that when I run along the lake, that even though the air temperature says this, the air off of the lake makes it that much colder, that you have that different air temperature. And the winds are always stronger than what they say. So like the Weather Channel will tell you it's 5 to 10, but it really feels like 30 when you're out there with winds off of the water. So I had an extra light jacket that I threw in my bag kind of last minute before we left for the race, or before we left for Harrisburg. And I put that on, and I am 100% glad that I did, because it was actually colder than I thought it was going to be. I mean, I enjoy that race temperature and I train in it all the time, but it felt colder than what I thought it was going to feel. And I never warmed up until about mile 19. Typically I would feel myself sweating. My hands would sweat enough that I wouldn't want gloves anymore, even at that temperature. And I never felt that in this race. So I was thankful that I had that extra little jacket that I put on top. And the jacket was a full zip. So I knew if I didn't want it at some point, I was going to see my husband several times on the race course. I could toss it to him if I simply didn't want it anymore. But that happened to be one of my best decisions for that race. And then I wore a visor with an ear warmer. because it's pretty chilly again. And I don't like having cold ears.
Me neither. Wow.
Um,
So as you're getting to the start line and getting in your corral, how big of a race is this? It doesn't sound like it's a very big production.
No, we thought it was going to be over 1,000 runners because they had the bibs numbered by an alphabetical order, and I was number 807, and there were several after me. So we assumed it was over 1,000. It ended up only maybe only those many finished, but it was about 700 that finished the race. And they didn't really have corrals. It was just line up at the start. And in the phone call out, so on our way out to Harrisburg, I was on the phone call with my coach and my husband, and we were talking about, my race goal and my time. My coach had said, as a side note, I took a look at some of the results from past years. And, obviously depending on who shows up and how everybody runs, he says, you could absolutely podium your age group in this marathon. But I never go into marathons with a podium or thinking about that. Triathlons, absolutely. I am always racing for a podium in a triathlon because I'm definitely more competitive in those races. But in a marathon of 7 to 1,000, I'm not thinking podium ever. It's not part of my mind. So, we back and forth, that's possible, but that would just be icing on the cake. That's not even a goal that I have for this particular race.
It doesn't really matter right now.
Right. Yeah. So, if it happens, it's great. If it doesn't happen, it's not going to ruin my day because it's not even part of my race plan or my goal. But what I had, looking over the race website, they do their, awards not by chip time, but by gun time.
Really?
Yes. So they do age group awards by chip time. That doesn't matter where you start. But if you wanted to go for an overall masters or overall winner, it was on gun time. So if you started way back and you wanted to go for the overall, you were already screwed because you had a 30-second difference to make up. So when we read that, my husband said, I want you to start legitimately at the front. And I said, I am going to get run over by those guys out there running 2:30, 2:45 for air. He said, don't worry about it. Cross the start line and just make your way over to the right-hand side, because we knew I was making a right-hand turn first. And don't worry about it. They'll run around you. It's not a big deal. He said, but just in case we have a potential of you, doing well in not just your age group, but overall, I'd like to see you at the front. So, since there were no corrals, other than there were some pacers and some pace groups, they had those signs up, but I legitimately started on the start line. My foot was on the start line when the gun went off.
Wow.
So it was nice to be able to have that option.
So the last few minutes before the gun goes off, how's your anxiety, nerves, and all this at this point?
Yeah, I was bouncing around a bunch, partly from being cold, but mostly from nerves and excitement. And my husband, I think, could feel it and could see it. And he was standing there right next to me. And he says, you need to make sure you follow this race plan. He said, you're going to be up here with the fast guys. Don't try to go out with them. It's not going to work well for you later in the race. He says, I know you're excited and I can see you're really focused, but you've got to reel it in for, at least this first mile. Like, don't go out with them. So I had done my warm up that I like to do. And, now since I'm in the actual, I guess, corral, if you want to call it that, but it was a mass start, I was still doing some hip swings and some hip openers and just trying to stay. I was warm. I was not cold, but I wasn't sweating. So I was somewhere in between the two and just, staying warm. And I remember thinking at one point, like, there's all this nervous energy, all this, anxious energy has got to exit me somehow. I can't let it dump too soon or else it's going to affect my race. So either I need to channel it and use it in the race, or I I have to hold on to it because I can't just let it go right now, right before the race.
Right. So as the gun goes off here, how does the first few miles go for you?
It was fine. Honestly, it was a little, I struggled with holding back on the pace, not just because I was excited, but because it was not the pace my body was naturally wanting to run. So when I looked at my splits at the end of the race, and even like I was in the middle of the race, I would have a really fast half mile and then a really slow half mile and then a really fast half mile, and then a really slow, because you could see that I was wanting to go faster and then saying, okay, no, I have to hold it back. I have to slow it down. I have to, follow the race plan, trust the race plan, trust my coach. It's going to work, but I have to follow this, because otherwise I might blow up. And if I can do this right now, I'm confident that I've got the rest of it in the bag. So the first few miles went by super easy. I saw my husband at mile 3, and that was exciting, and saw him for a moment. And we made a couple turns, a couple beautiful bridges, ran along the river. And I mean, other than a fluctuation my pace, I felt strong. I felt great. My coach was also concerned about the air temperature and the lungs. So I think he wanted me to be a little bit more conservative at the first part to allow my lungs to get warmed up before I started increasing the pace. And I think that made sense, and that helped a lot as well.
Wow. So paint the picture of what this course looks like for the first few miles. The atmosphere, what you see, what the views are like, people around you. What does this look like?
We start on a bridge,
okay,
in the middle of a bridge. And so we go across it, and then we made a right-hand turn, and then we made another right-hand turn on a different bridge, crossed back over the river, kind of went a little bit downtownish, I suppose. It was more of like a restaurant district. We went by a lot of like lawyers, like buildings and Victorian homes and some restaurants. And then we made a left-hand turn where we went down a level, sort of. So we went down a little hill onto this lower level, like bike, hike, walk path that was right on the river. I mean, if the river was swollen enough from rain, it would be on the walk path. I mean, it was pretty high considering, or pretty close to the walk path, but so it was beautiful. And we went south there for a couple miles right along the river. And that was super peaceful, because at this point we're running into the sunrise. So the sun was rising over the river, and there was a little part of like a little all. I mean, it was super serene. It was super peaceful. It was a super easy place to sort of zone out and just run and not think about anything. And for 700, thinned out faster than I thought it was going to. So I had some people in front of me. I always had some people behind me, but I definitely felt like I was running my own race. And that's sort of how I enjoy running. It's more of a personal experience for me. So I enjoy that peace and that solitude. I don't run with music or earbuds. So it's just me and the singer.
Your thoughts.
Yes. And the sounds of my feet and whatever else I'm looking at, or the thoughts in my head. And that's what speaks to me of running a marathon or run a race. And this race was scenic marathon courses I've run. So we went south for a little while, went onto a little trail, which I didn't quite enjoy because the rocks were a little bit large and the surface was uneven. And it was early enough that it didn't affect me, but I remember, I wonder what this is going to do to my hips and ankles later in the race, because on surface that is not even. I'm not rolling my ankles, but I'm definitely not landing like I'm landing on asphalt.
Right.
So that was, I wouldn't say it was worrisome. I had that thought of, what is this going to do to me later? And I said to myself, don't worry about what it's going to do to you later. We'll handle that when we get there. Right now, we're just going to keep running. But at that 1.5 miles, I spent more time looking at the ground than I did looking around just to make sure I was going to land on proper footing.
Wow. So when you're on the trail here, do you have an idea of how you're measuring up to your goal?
Yes. So I'm following I'm looking at my splits every half mile, and I'm looking at my pace, and my pace was exactly where my coach wanted me to be. And I was just behind the 3:20 pace group. And there was a small part of me that almost went out with that 3:20 pace group just to see if I could handle it. But then I talked myself out of that. But so I used that pace group as a guide throughout the whole race, because there were several times like we did a little, like a little mini out and back piece. So when they went past me, I picked a landmark, a tree or a rock, and I looked at my watch and I said, okay, when I pass this, I'll know how much time ahead of me they are. And I don't want it to be more than 5 minutes, because that means I'm not on my 3:25, which was my mental, nobody really knew that, but my mental goal. And at 8 miles, they were only about 90 seconds ahead of me. So I thought, all right, I'm actually pretty close to them. So I felt pretty confident at mile. I was maybe mile 7, but pretty close to that I was right on pace, and I was feeling good. So if I'm feeling good and only about 90 seconds behind this 3:20 pace group, I'm doing all right.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about your nutrition plan here. Over the course of the entire marathon, you're going to get in about 200 to 250 calories overall. I mean, if we compare this to what you're going to do on the bike of an Ironman, you're going to get in 300 to 350 calories per hour on the Ironman bike. But here you can work out just running, even though it's more intense, on a lot less calories. So what was your nutrition plan, and how did you execute this?
My nutrition plan, what works for me, and I do realize that caloric intake is probably on the low side for just about any marathoner, but for some reason it works well for me. And I can make adjustments if I feel that the calories are low, and it feels like, so I could easily make adjustments. But for this particular race, I didn't have to. What I've trained and what I do in all my open marathons is starting at about 2.5 miles, I start taking my hydration. So I guess taking a step back real quick, I am always completely self-sufficient in all of my races because I'm allergic to that maltodextrin. So I can't have anything, or I can't trust that I can have anything on the race course that is provided. Now, luckily, this race was sponsored, or they used Honey Stinger, which is the only product that I can use out there that doesn't have maltodextrin. So I could have used but they used gels, and I prefer the chews. And then also I can't use on-course hydration because most powdered mixes have the maltodextrin. So I run with a bottle of Numa, which is a organic electrolyte coconut water drink. It doesn't have a lot of calories in it, but it has the perfect amount of sea salt and potassium and electrolytes in it, and the natural electrolytes from the coconut. So I run with a bottle of that, and I run with Honey Stinger chews. So at mile 2.5, I start with the Numa, and I take it. I can drink Numa if I'm thirsty, I'm going to drink. But if I haven't had anything to drink, I'm starting it at mile 2.5. And then at mile 3 starts my first Honey Stinger chew. And then basically for the rest of the marathon, every half mile, I'm taking something. I'm sipping on my Numa on the half miles, and I'm taking a Honey Stinger chew on the full miles for the entire length of the marathon. So I get that constant, I guess, flow of electrolytes, carbohydrates / sugar, but it's a small amount. So my stomach isn't getting GI stress, but I have that constant flow. So even though I feel, yes, it is a lower caloric intake, I think that constant flow is what works great for me.
Wow. So as you're approaching, say, miles 10 through 13, you're approaching the halfway point. How is your nutrition plan up to that point?
It was legitimately spot on. I don't know if I could have done it any more perfect. I had some trouble because my hands were so cold because it was much colder than I thought. I did have some struggle getting the honey stinger chews out of the bag for this race. Sometimes it would take me almost a quarter of a mile before I could get it out of the bag and into my mouth. But I was still taking it at every interval that I was supposed to be taking it. So it was spot on. And I saw my husband at mile 8 when we crossed over a bridge, and then we went around town again and came back over a different bridge, which was only like 300 feet from where he was standing before. So I saw him again at mile 10. And mile 10 was when he gave me my second bag of honey stinger. I didn't have at that moment. So he gave me my second bag of honey stingers. He asked me how I was doing. And I said to him, I am done effing around. I want to go, because I was just so tired of messing with this like what felt like slow pace. And he says, well, then go. And that was
what mile was this?
Mile 10.
Okay.
Mile 10. So as soon as he gave me that green flag, because I was waiting for someone to say it is okay. Like, because I was trying to follow this race plan, but I was tired of running 750s. I wanted to run faster. And he said, then go. And then we ran like down a hill and then under the bridge that he was standing on. And he said, how are you doing? How are you doing? And I said, I'm good. I'm fine. He said, all right, I'll see you at mile 15. And, I left running and he left. And I know that I was doing well on my nutrition because my mind was great. My body felt great. And then as soon as he said that, I dropped my pace and I legitimately never looked back. I held that marathon, my goal race pace, for the remainder of that marathon. So my nutrition was spot on. And I know that it was, because I couldn't have done it otherwise.
Wow. So as you're approaching, say, miles 14 through 18, what are you seeing and how are you feeling at this point?
Basically 11 through 18, we are running right along the river and we're running north. And so we have quite a bit of a headwind for this particular section of the course. And at about mile 12, I started to have a little like mini dark moment where, I was just kind of like, wow, this doesn't feel great. I don't know. Like, I don't even remember what I thought. I just remember not being as positive as I was for the first 11 miles. And then I said to myself, dude, you've done like 17 and 19 miles at a faster pace than this. Like, what is your head doing right now? And I said, you know what? I don't know what it's doing right now, but I'm going to turn it around. And I don't know how I snapped myself out of it. I don't know why I got into it, but it was probably like a 30-second piece of, this doesn't feel great. Okay, you're not going to focus on this. Okay, that's over. And then I'm good to go. And from that point on, I was fine. But we were running into a bit of a headwind. And it wasn't incredibly comfortable. But again, what's great about living on the lake in Ohio is I do it almost every single day. So it was nothing that I hadn't trained with before. It was actually perfect. And so for somebody else where it might break them, for me, it was like, this is just another long run for me.
Right. So as far as your mental game, you had one mini dark moment here that you actually felt. And then are you having any blisters or chafing issues?
No, none of it. None. The only thing that was affecting me at all was my cold hands. My hands never got warm. Not until about mile 19 when I turned around, the wind was now at my back. But other than that, I had no blisters, no chafing, no sweat in the eyes. I mean, absolutely nothing. It was a pretty perfect race.
Wow. So as you're hitting miles 19 through 23, how are you feeling? Do you realize that your goal is almost within reach at this point? Because I know you're looking at your overall time and you're obviously looking at your pace and you're monitoring half-mile splits along the way, and you know that you've got a lot of time in the bank now.
Right. So I see my husband at mile 15 and, you know, he's telling me I'm right on the money and you're doing good. And he throws out there, like, you've got 16 girls ahead of you, or you're in 16th place or something like that. There was some place that he gave me, and I didn't really even care about that, but I just knew I was on pace, and he kept asking me how I was feeling. And at mile 15, he took my water bottle that I had and refilled it with the Pneuma, so I would have more Pneuma for my second half, because one of those bottles only lasts me about half the race. So I saw him again, because at 18, we turn around and start heading back. So I saw him again at mile 20, and, you know, he asks, how are you doing? And I said, I'm great. And I said, 10K left. And he said, go get it, girl. And he says, again, you have about 16 girls ahead of you. And he said, you have 16 girls about 30 seconds ahead of you. And I heard it, and I said, you know what? I'm just going to pocket that information, because right now I know I am probably a sub 20 or sub 325, and I can hold this pace. I have I have a 10K left. I have 6 miles. I can absolutely do this. But if I do this, like, I'm not going to blow up trying to chase ponytails, because that's not in my race plan. Sure, if I wanted to win, I would have gone for broke, but that wasn't my race plan. And I didn't want to affect what I was having success. And, you know, after I left him, I had a little moment where I got a little choked up, that I was trying to keep my emotions in check, because I knew that I was going to do this. Like, I legitimately knew I have 6 miles. Sure, it sounds like a lot to some people, but really, I only had 6 miles left. I feel like I can freaking hold this pace for 6 more miles. So that's exactly what I did. I just started, like, clicking off miles and focusing on keeping my nutrition up. And because one of the things I've learned is, I've said to myself, if you feel like you don't need the nutrition, that means you're doing a good job with the nutrition, because your body is using it, and you're keeping your gas tank full. If you already get to the point where you are low on nutrition, making up for it while you're running, or while you're in this workout, or while you're in this competition, you know, trying to backpedal, that is not going to work out. So I kept saying to myself, if you feel like you don't need it, means you're doing it right. Just keep taking it. So I just kept taking it, and, you know, looking around and enjoying the beautiful course. And then, like, slowly but surely, I started passing people. I was passing guys. I was passing girls. And then it was like, okay, this is a little exciting. I'm passing some girls, and I wasn't counting them, but I was passing girls. And the other thing my husband's running group has taught me is, when you're racing and you pass somebody, to pass them with a sense of purpose. Like, make them think that they can't stay with you. So even at the end of a marathon, I was somehow capable of doing this. So the person, I would look over and say, you know, hey, nice job, or keep it up, or, you know, good run. And they would say, hey, you too. And they would spend like maybe 2 steps with me. And then I would look at them again and then pick up the pace. And it may have only been for 10 or 15 seconds, but it was enough to say, try to stay with me. I dare you. Just try it. And not a single person even tried to match my step. And I didn't know how long I could handle those pickups, but it was fun to sort of keep me occupied for those last 6 miles. So every person I passed, I did that to, and not a single person stayed with me. And that was incredibly rewarding. And for the last 6 miles, that gave me so much more confidence and power that I was like, I mean, my pace dropped those last 6 miles, which is unheard of in a marathon. You don't negative split a marathon, and I negative split a marathon.
Wow. So as you're approaching miles 23, 24, and 25, you realize that you're crushing it. You're passing all these people. You're getting excited. How was the emotion whenever you really understood that you're actually going to go sub 325, which was your really unspoken of goal? When did you realize that, and what was that like for you to realize that this is happening?
So at mile 24, I looked down and I saw my pace, and I knew it was, 2 miles or 2.2 miles or whatever. And I saw my overall time, and I don't even remember what it was, but I added 16 minutes to it, which would have been 8-minute miles. And it was still a sub 25. And then it was like then it was absolutely for real. I mean, I can do this. But mile 24 was also where I felt the most fatigue. I mean, my quads started a little bit of talking back to me. Like every step that I took, I could feel my quads like barking, saying this is not feeling great. But I said, I have 2 miles. I freaking can do anything for 2 miles. Just give it to me. Just let me do this 2 miles. So I just kept my head up and focused on what was in front of me, and started that positive thinking that I know has worked well. So all those thoughts, like, you can do this, you got this. Remember that 17-mile run that you did that you crushed. But yeah, that positive thinking also led into emotions, because now I know I'm going to crush it. So now I'm like trying to choke back tears at mile 24. I'm trying to manage my quads that are screaming, and, I'm like, you can't break it here. You can, as soon as you cross that finish line, you can do whatever the heck you want. But right now you need to stay focused. So, at like mile 24.75 or so, they made us go down a hill again to the river level. And I remember thinking, I don't want to go downhill, because that means I have to come back up for the finish line. And man, that was tough. So we went down, and then that turnaround was actually a 180-degree turnaround. So you were going straight, and you legitimately had to do a 180-degree turn and go straight up a hill to get up to the finish line level. And that's hard on the ankles to do a 180-degree turn at mile 25 when you're tired. And there was a girl right in front of me that was making before me. And I turned and I looked at her and I said, "Hey, nice job." And I kept running. And as soon as I turned and kept running, she stopped and started walking. And I felt bad. And then the girl behind me, a spectator, said, "I believe in you. I know you got this." And I just pretended like she was talking to me and not talking to the runner behind me that was walking. And that was all the motivation I needed to get up that hill. I don't care who you're talking to. If you're saying, "I believe in you," it's going to be, you're talking about me right now. And so I rounded that hill, made a couple more turns. And then the real emotions came when I turned that last turn for the finish line, and I saw the race clock, and it said like 3:22 or something. And that's when I was like, I got this. So I just suckered every ounce of energy I had left, and I just went for that finish line. And it was, the best feeling, crossing that finish line at 3:23. I couldn't believe it.
Wow. So the last, say, 400 yards of the race, what was this like for you?
It was not easy. That hill tore my legs. But there was 2 guys in front of me, and I said, "All right, we're going to go get those guys." And I did. And so I just used them as motivation. The spectators at this race were amazing. They lined the streets. They're cheering for everybody. I mean, you feel like you're a pro when you're running down that. It's like a scream tunnel. It was really cool. So I just used all of that for motivation, and just ran as best as my legs were going to carry me for that last 400. I mean, that's all I can expect.
Wow. So after you finished, what'd you do next?
Well, I put my hands on my knees and took a moment to catch my breath, gather my thoughts, and like just sort of, I guess, take it all in. And then, my husband was on the sidelines, and he called me over. He wanted to say hi. So I want to say I ran over to him, but I went over to him, and he gave me like the biggest hug. It literally took my breath away. I mean, I was unable to breathe when he was hugging me. He was hugging me so tight, because he was just so proud that I can set these high goals for myself and then actually make them happen. So he completely felt my emotion watching me cross that finish line. He had as much invested as I did.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was, I wish, like, I have that picture in my mind's eye, and there's a part of me that wishes I had a friend there that could take a snapshot photo of me hugging him at the finish line, because that would have been a great picture for me to have. but I have it in my mind's eye, and that's just as good.
Wow. So how was your recovery process other than spending the next 5 hours in the truck in normal take boots?
Right. Well, so as soon as the race was done and he gave me the hug and we chatted about my time and, how great it was. And he, since he was at the finish line, he was counting the girls that were crossing. And he said, "You passed so many girls in that last 10K. Do you realize how many girls you passed?" And I said, "I don't, because I wasn't counting, but I know I passed a bunch because I was just running well." And he said, "You were 9th girl to finish." And I said, "Are you serious?" And he said, "Yeah, you were top 10 girl." He goes, "Let me go check He's like, "I want to go check the results. I want to go check the results and see where you came in overall for the Masters division." And I said, "Okay, well, I'm going to sit right here." I'm like, "I just need to sit down." And I never sit after races because you cramp, everything clinches up. But he says, there's a step over there. You can sit down, but I wouldn't recommend it. And I said, "I don't care right now. I just need to sit." And I wanted to take off my shoes. So I sat down, I took off my shoes, and then he went and got the results and took a picture of it and came back with this huge smile on his face. And he said, "You won overall female Masters. First female over 41 to cross the finish line, or over 40. And I could not believe it. I made him show me the picture he took on his phone of the results. And he said, "Now are you glad that you listened and, started at the starting instead of, with the gun time?" I said, "Absolutely." But to finish first overall female Masters in a marathon this size was, again, it wasn't a goal of mine. It was icing on the cake, but it made everything so much sweeter. And then we looked at the times of like my finish time and then the other two girls that were second and third overall Masters. I put 2 minutes on them and I passed them in the last 10K. So that means in the last 10K, not only did I catch them, but I also put 2 minutes on them after I passed them in the last 10K of the marathon.
Gosh.
That was like a huge, again, confidence booster.
Man. So looking back on it, you were obviously well prepared going into this race, but if you could give anybody some advice on how to approach a marathon like this, what would you give them?
I would say, lots of things. I would say practice your nutrition plan in your training. So starting at mile maybe 13 or 14, when you start doing those long runs, practice your training plan. Know what works well for your body. Know what your body can handle during the actual run, as well as what you're eating before. Both hydration and nutrition. If you don't have, the problems I do with the maltodextrin, look at what the race is providing on the course and then practice with that. So you don't have to carry everything. You can use all the amenities that the race is giving you, but practice it on your own at home. So if they're serving Gatorade, practice with a Gatorade. If they're going to give you honey stingers, practice with honey stingers. And then that will just make everything more smooth on race day. And then I would say devise a plan and stick to it, because that taper week, your mind does all kinds of crazy things to your thought process. You want to change your shoes and you want to buy new shoes and you want to change your nutrition plan and, you want to wear different gear. And, your mind is now not busy running. So it's going to be busy thinking, but not in things of greatness. So make a training plan and absolutely stick to it. And then don't change anything. Don't buy new shoes at the expo and wear them at the race. That kind of stuff.
Wow. So how can athletes follow you?
I am active on Instagram. My handle is KW Tries, TRI, Tries. And I do have a Twitter. I'm not as active on it as I am on Instagram, but it's Mrs. Wikel Tries. And I was originally going to use it for my student athletes, but I it's not really for that. It's mostly just triathlon stuff or running stuff on there as well.
Wow. So moving forward, what's next for you? I know you're doing Boston next year, obviously, but what else is on the docket for next year?
Well, I'm not doing Boston 2019.
You're not?
No, I didn't. I didn't get. Okay, so long story short on that, I know we're wrapping up. Long story short is I ran 2018 this year, and so I requalified. Yep. I ran my fastest Boston at Boston this year.
Nice.
I think I just wanted to get the heck out of it. I think I was hypothermic. I wanted to get the heck out of the rain. So I requalified at Boston with my fastest in Boston time ever. But as you probably have heard, so once you qualify, you then have to apply, and they take all the applicants and then take the top best times from those applicants. Well, the cutoff time for this year was 12 seconds faster than my time. So I missed the cutoff time by 12 seconds. I ran a 3:40:20. I needed to run a 3:40:08 in order to get into this year. So that bitter taste in my mouth was what drove me to do this marathon as best or as fast as I could. You know, some people, when they get that bitter taste in their mouth, they want to spit it out because they never want to taste it again. No, I let it like salivate. Oh, for sure. I chomped on it. I was angry about it. I was sad about it. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to not ever let this happen again. Not ever. So when I qualify for Boston, it's going to be definitive. There's no way I'm not getting in the next time I try to qualify for Boston. So that's why that 3:25 was, a 3:30 would have got me in with a 3:40 qualifying time. But that 3:25 was my definitive. Like, there's no way I'm not going to make it. So I'm not running Boston 2019, sadly. I will be there in heart because I feel like I should be. But I am doing an Ironman next year, my third Ironman. It'll be Ironman Lou.
Really?
Will be my A. Well, I'll have two A races, I suppose. It'll be my A race next year. I'll do nationals, USAT nationals in Cleveland again in August. I'll do the double again, the sprint and Olympic. I'll probably do Muncie 70.3 as just a, race sort of tweaker to make sure my nutrition's down for the Ironman in October. And then I'll do a few, local tries and things throughout the summer. But I would say Muncie, nationals, and Lou are my top races for next calendar year.
Wow, that's awesome. So you've been in the sport for some time now. What races are on your bucket list?
Oh boy. Sure. I mean, far-fetched dream. I'd love to do Kona someday, but you'd have to qualify to get there. So I don't know if that will happen in my lifetime. I have done Ironman 70.3 World Championships. I did it in 2016 in Australia. I love to do that again, qualify for World Championship 70.3. That distance is a fun distance for me. I really enjoy it. Be competitive regardless of where that race is. I feel like marathon list, do that someday. But yeah, really, I don't know if other than like Kona being as far-fetched as it could be, that would be a pretty cool race to do.
Wow. Well, I mean, even in your age group at Louisville, the fastest marathon time was 3:44 this year.
Right, but that was after a bike and a swim.
A
short swim. Yeah.
But the bike was a little miserable this year.
Just a little.
Yeah. Well, Kim, it's been great hearing from you. And now that we know everything that you have to share with us this time, I just want to say you're welcome back on you after nationals or Muncie or anything next year, even Lou. because I'm still going to be doing this, and it's going to be fun along the way. And I only have one more question for you.
Okay.
And that's, what's your definition of a perfect race?
Gosh, that's a hard question. I think ultimately I would say I will let you know when I achieve it. But I think a perfect race, gosh, does it exist? Because is there always something you can improve on? I mean, while I say this particular marathon was about as perfect as I've run, I still got done and said, what if I didn't go conservative in that first 10K? Could I have gotten a 3:20? Could I have stayed with that pace group? Is there something I could have improved on in this race? And that sense of always wanting to do better or always wanting to improve, which is part of the athletic spirit, I think then lies that is there a perfect race for somebody who's always looking to improve? But I mean, I suppose you could look at it in forms of nutrition. You could look at it in forms of performance. You could look at it in attitude. There's all kinds of ways you measure a perfect race. So it's pretty subjective, but I will certainly let you know when I achieve it.
Awesome. Well, Kim, it's been great, and I look forward to following you in the future, and I've enjoyed this. This was really fun.
Yeah, thank you. I did as well.
Awesome. Well, have a good day, and we'll talk soon, okay?
All right, thanks.
Thanks for tuning in today. I hope you were able to learn something from today's episode. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to leave a review on iTunes or share it with a friend. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you'd like to see pictures from this athlete's race, learn more about who I am, what I'm doing, or be on the show yourself to share your story, check out my website at CoachTerryWilson.com. Until next time, continue the pursuit.